Hello everyone. So many of you have requested me to make a video on what are the resources that I used in my first year of MBBS, and this video is exactly going to be on that topic. So hi, I am Sneha. I am in my second year of MBBS and I'm doing it from College of Medicine and JNM Hospital, Kalyani, West Bengal. So to begin with the video, I'd like to talk about two things. Number one, what subscription to take, and number two, is there any PYQ books that you need to buy? And then I'm going to continue with the three subjects and what books I refer to in each of them. So talking about subscription, the primary question from your side will be, is subscription absolutely necessary? To answer that, I'd like to say that the different videos available on several platforms, are extremely information rich and highly curated to suit best for first year MBBS students. And honestly, I would personally not recommend dismissing them altogether without even, giving it a shot, especially when there are several students who are taking benefit from them. So to do the least, give it a shot, try at least once, and then see whether that method suits you well or not. And if not, then you can proceed with different method. But please don't dismiss the idea of lecture at the first thought itself. And there's another reason why I say this, because talking about NEET, PG, or any other competitive exams that you're going to appear for in a few years, you need to come back to video-based learning at some point of MBBS, right? So developing the ability to learn effectively from a video early on is very important. Now you may counter saying, Didi, subscription is definitely not the only way in which we are going to get the video. We have other methods as well, but you all need to understand one thing, that the other sources that you come across are definitely not permanent, right? They are there today, yes, but may not be there after a few months. So I will not consider those to be particularly reliable sources. That said, you do you. But if you can comfortably afford a subscription, then please do go ahead. You are not going to regret it. Now the next question is, which applications subscription should you take? I believe that you all should take that application in which Dr. Ashwini Kumar from Anatomy will teach in. Presently he teaches in Marrow, so you all should take subscription of Marrow. That said, this video is absolutely not sponsored by them. But take the subscription only for a year and only for the 3 subjects of first year MBBS. You do not need beyond that at this point in your life. Now you might ask me that, Didi, why are you just speaking about anatomy? Are the other 2 subjects not of the same level? No, absolutely not. In fact, I did personally read end to end from Dr. Rebecca James of Biochemistry. So anatomy and biochemistry, I did use Marrow's video lecture itself. But talking about physiology, I personally did not have the need to learn it from videos. Books were sufficient for me. So I will not comment on that, but I'm sure it will be good as well. But overall, if you ask me whether a subscription is worth it or not, it is definitely worth it, and you should take it if you can afford. And one thing you will realize slowly after you get into your first year is that you all are subconsciously so used to coaching based learning that you will have a kind of difficulty in learning through textbooks. If you gradually find it easier to read from textbooks directly, I think it is a boon. But many students lose this ability because of school and coaching, and so they always wait for someone who will teach them, and then they'll make notes and read it onward. So I think this purpose is best served by video-based learning, so a subscription really does help. Next question is, when you should take the subscription. This is something that you really need to think about a little bit strategically. Why so? Because see, for example, in our board, that in West Bengal University of Health Sciences, the examination, for example, in our year, that is last year, the examination for first year concluded in the month of November. So you actually need a plan that will sustain till November. So the 12-month plan subscription should remain valid till the completion of your exams, because believe me, you need to go back to certain videos, certain topics before your examinations for some explanation. So the best time for taking the subscription, I think, is around late September kind of thing. But if you belong to other university, obviously don't blindly follow the timeline that I am telling you all. Instead, look at the usual schedule of your university and calculate the months and take it. Now the second thing that I'd like to talk about is PYQ books. And I want you to listen to this point specifically if you're going to an offline bookstore to buy books. See, for example, if you stay in Kolkata and you're going to College Street, any bookstore, they will first ask you what books you need. Once they have given you the textbooks that you want from them, they will very likely or maybe mandatorily try to hand you 3 different PYQ books of 3 subjects written by some author that they want to sell. I fell prey to this, but trust me, all the 3 books that I had bought are sitting in one end of my shelf and I have not touched them ever since, because you do not need them. So you might ask me, from where will we study PYQ and semester questions? Practically in every university there is a circulating PDF of, I guess, the past 15 years solved PYQs and semester questions, which your seniors will hand over as soon as you join your college. Those are written and compiled by medical students. So, they are specifically tailored to the kind of questions that your college or your university will ask. So, I think it is better to not go with a standardized PYQ book, rather completely rely on those PDFs that will be circulated and sent to you later. Because, standing at the bookstore, it might seem like a very little expense compared to the huge expense that you're doing on your textbook. But, these unnecessary purchases add up later, so it is absolutely not necessary to buy any PYQ books. Now I'd like to move towards the 3 core subjects of first year and continue with what I have studied in 3 of them. So what have I studied for anatomy? See, the gold standard textbook for anatomy is Gray's Anatomy, but I have not studied it, neither did any of my classmates, because I think you will already be overwhelmed with the Indian authors and will not specifically find the urge to read Gray's Anatomy, so I'm shifting that aside. If you still find after reading Indian author the ability and the want to read something as Gray's Anatomy, you are definitely more than welcome. But don't read things which are above your grasping ability, okay? So the Indian author main textbooks for anatomy are B.D. Chaurasia and Vishram Singh. Which one did I read? I read Vishram Singh. And which one will I recommend you all to read is also Vishram Singh. Because first, Vishram Singh is a bit more concise than B.D. Chaurasia, which allows a chance of more rapid and effective revision. And second, the pictorial representation of different parts of the body as well as the diagrams are quite easier and more traducible. So I'll just show you references. This is from B.D. Chaurasia and this is the same thing from Vishram Singh. And I'm sure you can clearly understand why I said that. But keeping that aside, both of them are great textbooks and do not differ much pertaining to the information they contain. It is just about the presentation. So, buying either is okay. But if you talk about my recommendation, it will always be Vishram Singh. I bought General Anatomy, all the 4 books of Gross Anatomy, as well as Neuroanatomy of Dr. Vishram Singh's book. Now comes Embryology. So, I did study General Embryology from Langman and used a PDF of Dr. I.B. Singh's Embryology. And I did not quite use a book specifically for histology because whatever was taught in the class during a histology class was quite okay and sufficient for us. But if you still want to, you can refer to Dr. I.B. Singh's book of histology. Now let me come to how did I study these books. First and foremost thing that I did was I watched Dr. Ashwini sir's anatomy lecture end to end, every lecture, and I made notes. Now you can ask me when all these notes are supplied by Marrow itself or the platform from which you're watching the video, why do I make notes? Because first of all, I cannot just simply watch something without penning it down. And secondly, if you do not make notes while sir is drawing himself, I think you cannot produce it effectively in your exam. So I'll urge you all to, whenever sir is drawing in his lecture videos, you will also replicate the same drawing along with sir in your notes. In exam, you'll keep forgetting things unless you practice it. So this is how I used to draw and take notes while listening to those lectures, and this is exactly the things that I've revised even before my prof examination. Secondly, after watching his videos, I used to open Vishram Singh's book and I used to just read once the things that are written, but the clinical boxes that is given in Vishram Singh, those purple boxes where they talk about clinical correlation, those are very important for exam point of view, definitely, but as well for your onward clinical knowledge. Now let me come to embryology. As I said, general embryology I read end to end from Langman, but systemic, for me Langman was a bit overwhelming. So what I did was, Dr. Ashwini sir do have lectures on systemic embryology as well, beautiful lectures. So I did watch them, and after that I read those and took help from Dr. I.B. Singh's book of embryology for the systemic part. Neuroanatomy also, I followed Dr. Ashwini sir's video and notes complete and backed it up with few portions from Vishram Singh's book. Next question is about buying an atlas. Do you need an atlas or not? I never used atlas, so I do not think it is necessary to buy it. You can keep a PDF of Netter's atlas. I think buying it is not necessary because I'm sure you're not going to go back to it very often. Rather, I used an app called 3D Anatomy. This is not any kind of paid promotion, or am I asking you all to buy it? But you all can download the app and look at the free version available, and if it suits you and your learning style, definitely you can go forward and take it. It is quite good if you have interest and seeing how a muscle works while reading about it. Next, I'd like to talk about the bone set. So, do you need to buy a bone set? The answer to it is yes, please. If you're not comfortable buying singularly, buy it in a group. If you stay in a hostel, that is also completely fine. But anyway, you will sell it the next year to your future batches. So, I think it's completely reasonable to buy one, because without a real bone set in your hand, the understanding of the attachments and all is quite difficult. I will urge everyone to buy a real bone set and avoid those artificial porcelain ones, because I really don't think so it does justice to the real anatomy and the structures of the bone as it should be. So that pretty much sums anatomy. Now let me come to physiology. So the gold standard books for physiology are, the higher one is Ganong, and a little below that, which is quite graspable, is Guyton. So what did I study? I studied from Guyton, and Indian author I studied from Debashish Pramanik's book of physiology. I did study DP, that is Debashish Pramanik, end to end. But talking about Guyton, I did selected portion of each chapter. You know what, Guyton is a very good read, but what happens is that I think you cannot revise it before your examination, because it's very vast. So for reading, yes, it is a splendid read. It builds your concepts, but you still need Indian author textbook, according to me, for writing answers in your examination. So always do refer to at least one Indian author book for physiology, and top that with Guyton and Hall's book of medical physiology. Now talking about the practical aspect of physiology, when you buy Debashish Pramanik's book, along with that there comes a practical manual of physiology, and I use that for my practical knowledge in classes. Now, did I use any video lectures for the subject of physiology? See, physiology as a subject all over is quite self-explanatory when read nicely. But there may be certain topics which might feel a little bit tangled up in your brain. Like for me, the topic of visual pathway, its defect, and then Golgi organs, and all those things felt a bit difficult, and therefore I saw few videos per topic from YouTube and other sources from Telegram, and I compiled them and made my own notes. But all these come quite at a later part of the syllabus, so the primary chapters that you'll face in physiology is quite understandable, and in the later part, if you have problem, it will be my pleasure to guide you all in the later half of the year. Here I would also like to talk about the stethoscope. Generally, people buy a stethoscope right at that moment when they crack NEET, but if you are thinking whether to buy one or not, or is it absolutely necessary in first year, see, there'll be certain examinations that you need to do in physiology which will require a stethoscope. So it is definitely a good thing to buy right in first year itself, because you are going to need it. But can it not be done if one does not have their own stetho? Yes, it could be. At least in our college, the department had their own stethos, and if somebody could not get a stetho, then they would pass it on, and obviously it could be managed, but I think it is a wise decision to get it. Now that is pretty much it for physiology. Now let me come to biochemistry. Again, biochemistry as a subject, the gold standard books are Harper and Lippincott. That said, I did not study from them. Yes, I did buy Harper, and in the initial months I used to refer to it for certain topics of different chapters, but I think Indian authors itself are only quite overwhelming in the subject of biochemistry. So you really do not enter the stage of wanting to read gold standard textbooks for biochemistry. So now let me come to Indian author. Indian author, I used the book of Vasudevan, and there is also another book that is Satyanarayan, which many people refer to. So how did I study biochemistry? First, I watched Dr. Rebecca James' video from Marrow end to end. Okay, and I made notes. So these are the pictures of my notes that I made in biochemistry. I watched her video and understood things first, and then I used to refer to the book of Vasudevan and read it. And neither did I need nor did I want to read any other source beyond this. One thing that I'd like to mention and emphasize about biochemistry is that when you step into your college, if not all, at least 60% of the student population will use a specific note as the primary source of biochemistry. Specific note as in Dr. Jambulkar sir's note. I have not read the note myself, but using the note as the primary source of information of biochemistry, I think is not the ideal thing to do. That can be used as an add-on. Like after you read a textbook, you can use that as an add-on for revising. Or maybe before the day of the examination, you can use that for a quick revision, because that is quite nicely put together. But you cannot use a note as the primary source of information in one subject. Then it actually diminishes what the subject has to offer. Because MBBS is definitely not about just passing an examination, right? I mean, your prof might be your target, but that should not be your only target in biochemistry. You should also want to learn something from the subject going on, right? So you can use notes as an add-on, but please don't make it a primary source. If you can read gold standard, then I mean, it's very good, but for me it was not possible. I read Vasudevan, Dr. Rebecca James' videos and her notes. They give a practical book for biochemistry as well with Vasudevan. I did refer to it for a few points, and moreover, the practical part of biochemistry is something that you need to do with your hands. That is, you need to do practical tests in the laboratory, and that, I think, while doing the test, you kind of get a grasp of it. So that pretty much sums up the resource that I used in my first year. Now you all can be curious as to whether these resources worked for me or not. To answer that, I'd like to say that I scored an aggregate of 72% in my first prof and was the second in my batch, which I think is a decent score. So yeah, if you use these sources judiciously, I do think your exams can go pretty well. What matters more in MBBS is not necessarily what you study from, rather it is more of a game of consistency. If you just read few days before the semester, I think grasping the total subject becomes quite a headache. So the only advice that I'd like to give you as a senior is that keep a habit of studying. I'm not telling you to study every day. It is maybe not possible in first year after studying so much for your NEET and all, but at least try to every day. So it is very important that in first year you get through with a strong base in all the three subjects, because these actually become the basis of your onward journey in MBBS. And I'm sure every one of you is going to do so very well. Thank you so much.